Hello BookTube, my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. This is my very first book review on this platform, so let's get started. I'm going to be reviewing Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is a book about superheroes and supervillains. A brief summary. The Renegades are a group of superheroes that manage to save humanity from supervillains and supervillain gangs. The supervillain gangs had toppled the government and crime was just apparent and rampant. So the superheroes managed to oust all the villains, including the main villain who was Ace Anarchy. The story in this book takes place 10 years after that and follows the niece of Ace Anarchy named Nova. Nova is also known as Nightmare, and her power is that she's able to put people asleep with the touch of her hand. Now, there's a second character who we also follow the storyline, and that is Adrian. Adrian's mom was one of the original founders of the Renegades, but she died before the fall of Ace Anarchy, and he was adopted by two of the other founders who are together, named Captain Chromium and the Dread Warden. Adrian wants to prove himself and prove that he is a capable person. He also wants the old-style superheroes to come back instead of focusing on policy and procedure. So what Adrian does is he tattoos himself, and his power is that anything he draws can come to life as long as his intention is there. And he ends up finding out that if he tattoos himself, he's able to gain more powers. So that's the basis of the plot. The book starts out with Nova trying to kill Captain Chromium. She ends up failing due to a variety of things, like one of the other anarchist named the Puppeteer. He interrupts in a large hot air balloon type thing and ends up creating chaos to the point where she can't really concentrate and she ends up missing her shot on Captain Chromium. Then also the other Renegades come in after she pulls the trigger and, tries to engage her in a fight. Now, Adrian, as the Sentinel, engages Nova, who is Nightmare, into a fight at that time. What ends up happening is Nova puts Adrian to sleep with a touch of her hand, and she gets away. Now, Adrian, in the meantime, had accidentally hurt one of his fellow Renegades, so he doesn't want to tell the Renegades that he was a Sentinel. At the end of this fight, before Nova fully leaves, she tells Adrian, "One cannot be brave who has no fear." Adrian becomes very interested in this phrase because that was the phrase on a piece of paper found on his mother's body after she was murdered. Now that leads to the two characters trying to figure out what they are going to do, and this is still within the first within the first part of the book. Nova, with the prompting of another anarchist named Leroy, decides to join the Renegades to try and take them out from the inside, and Adrian decides, you know what, that bee may just know who killed my mama, so I'm going to go find her. And there you have the primary plot to Renegades. Now, the first half of this book I found to be a little bit slow going. It's very much in establishing chapters, and that's not a bad thing by any means, and I, for one, cannot think of a way that the author can do it better, nor would I suggest that she can. Rather, for me, it was just a little bit slow. We're getting into this establishing the main characters and how exactly Nova gets into the Renegades, and it's just a little bit slow pacing for my tastes. However, I really loved the second half of this book. This one, for me, was one of those where if I had DNF'd it, I might have regretted it, because the second half, while it doesn't, I don't think, make up for the first half of the slowness, certainly kept my attention really, really well, and I liked the aspects that went into the second half of the book. Really, I loved the side characters to this book. Oscar is a funny guy, and he has a noticeable disability, but he's also just an amazing renegade in and of himself. He manages to surprise people around him, and he's just all around a cool guy. Oscar's superhero name is Smokescreen, and it's just amazing. I love it so much. Then there's Ruby, who is the Red Assassin, and I love that she picked that name just because it sounded cool. Sorry if that ruined it for anyone, but it's just they're both just two amazing characters. They act like teenagers, and it's wonderful to see superheroes who act young and have fun. And I love that they had so much happen to them. Like, both of them had some traumatic history, but they take that and they run with it, and they're still these happy-go-lucky people. Really, for me, the first half of the book, Adrian really shines through as a character. He has ambition, he has his secrets from his family, such as that he is a sentinel, and he really has a very awesome storyline. I love it in the beginning. But then in the second half, he kind of becomes a little bit too dimensional in my eyes. Whereas the opposite for Nova. The first half of the book, Nova seems a little bit two dimensional, and it seems kind of just whatever. But then the second half is where she really shines. You really get to see her outlook on the world and where she comes from with her point of view. So it was kind of weird because the first half I really more cared about Adrian's character, and then the second half I really cared more about Nova's character. But I guess if you put them together, then, it works out into one whole book. Another thing that I wish would have happened is that we would have known more that goes on beyond the city of Gatlin. We get to hear a lot about what happened in the city, but outside of which we only get to hear a little bit about, such as that other countries and other cities will send their superheroes to get trained by the Renegades. But we don't really hear about how they fare after, the prodigies rise up and pretty much topple governments. We don't really get to hear about what goes on there. Overall, this was a pretty okay book. It really was slow in the beginning for me, and that's really what kind of drew me off from making this an absolute 5-star. But overall, it's pretty good. It's a solid superhero story with, at the very least, really awesome side characters. And if nothing else, that is why I'm going to read Arch Enemies, because I need to see what happens with my man, Oscar. So please tell me in the comments whether you read this book or not and whether or not you liked it. If you liked this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you like seeing my face talk about books and use my grease board, hit that subscribe button. And as always and forever, may you get lost in a book.